Buenas tardes todas. No quiero confundir a los intérpretes. Sí voy a hablar en inglés, pero primero las quería saludar. I express my gratitude first to His Holiness Pope Francis for bringing his humanity and his focus on the human being and on respect for human dignity, and for showing compassion for human suffering. I think that women judges and prosecutors also bring these qualities to the system of justice. And my iPad is being difficult. I thank the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and Monsignor Marcelo Sanchez Orondo for lending this prestigious forum to shine a light on human trafficking and strategies to eliminate it. And of course, to the president of the International Association of Women Judges, my friend Susana Medina, for her extraordinary commitment and energy and for bringing us here together. We like to think that we live in this enlightened 21st century, a time when we have a broad acceptance of a well-developed conception of human rights and the prominence of the rule of law in a society that is oriented to human well-being. And we have amazing technology at our disposal to accomplish that. So how is it possible that now, in our time and where we live, and as we have heard, in every corner of the world, vulnerable persons, women, children, and men, are exploited and effectively enslaved? They become a commodity and are traded and sold in an echo of horrendous history, but now it is aided by using the most up-to-date means of communication and commerce, the internet, social media, and money laundering transactions intended to hide or obscure the ugly source of their revenue, including, as we heard earlier, the use of bitcoins. The trade is so widespread and so profitable that it is not surprising that it is entangled with organized crime. Make no mistake, this is a big business. According to the International Labor Organization, it earns profits of $150 billion each year. These are, of course, all estimates because it is so hard to get accurate figures. Approximately 20% of the human trafficking trade is for sexual purposes, but it is the most profitable part of that trade. 2/3, or about 100 billion, is generated by sexual trafficking annually. A trafficked sexual victim generates annual profits that are estimated to be 6 times more than persons trafficked for other labor. The returns on human trafficking can be huge, from 100% to 1,000%. We must follow the money to identify the criminal managers at the top and deny traffickers the profits of their illegal business. Only then can there be hope that large-scale trafficking will come to an end. Laura has just told us how this can be done and how money laundering can lead to the discovery of human trafficking operators. And the money that is recovered should be used for the benefit of the victims and for prevention. We should recognize that the business of human trafficking is linked to other illegal activities that cross borders, like drug trafficking. It can also be an integral part of terrorism, generating revenues and providing unwilling personnel to carry out terrorist activities. It thrives on the basis of corruption by public officials who are either actively involved or complicit by failing to investigate and enforce the law. By this time, the afternoon of the second day, after so many excellent presentations from different regions and countries of the world, I think about 60 so far, I don't want to repeat what has already been said so well. We have broad agreement on the need for collaboration with all the actors in the system of justice and cross-border movements of people, judges, prosecutors, police, border guards, and entry points. Also, with medical personnel who see the injuries suffered by victims of trafficking and must report them. They have an obligation to ask and report. We know that the vulnerability of persons is what makes them targets of traffickers. So, removing them from the anchors in their lives, their family, and their communities is a tool. Migrants and persons who are undocumented are therefore at special risk. We agree on the need to have a victim-centered approach that identifies them, seeks not to treat them as criminals, even though they might have been engaged in criminal activity, and that assists them to feel safe, cared for, and protected from future harm. To move from being a victim to being a survivor. We heard yesterday from the strong and brave young woman from Mexico who spoke from there, Pamela Munoz Ruiz, that intervention works. She has demonstrated that it is possible to become whole again, to get control of her life, to help others, and to become a role model and a living example. We have seen that there are public education campaigns within our communities and local programs to shelter and rehabilitate victims of human trafficking. At this point in our conversation, I would like to step back for a wider view to put this gross abuse of human rights in context. We might be shocked by the extent and brutality of human trafficking, but we should not be surprised at the high involvement of women and girls in labor and sexual trafficking. For as we know, the underlying problem is grounded in profound and long-standing views in societies that women are worth less, that their lives are devalued, that their bodies can be used and discarded. And there is a direct link between gender discrimination and the high rate of trafficking of victims who are women. Trafficking of women and girls is a type of gender discrimination that comes about as a result of other gender discrimination we are well familiar with, and that renders a person vulnerable to exploitation. Gender inequality fuels the balance of supply and demand that govern any trade. Let me give you a concrete example. The Economist magazine currently has an article about the trafficking of young women who are being brought into China. The young women are abducted by force, or they're drugged, or they're deceived with promises of romantic relationships, or by fraudulent offers of work, the usual tools. They come from rural areas in the bordering countries of Vietnam, Laos, North Korea, Myanmar. They are susceptible, why? Due to poverty and lack of opportunities, conditions that persist because they are female. They are the last to eat in the family, the last to be educated, and the first to be pulled from school when money is tight. They are the ones whose physical and mental health problems do not get treated. Thus, the supply side of the trafficking business is a direct result of discrimination against women. It's what has been referred to here repeatedly as the feminization of poverty. What this means is that elimination of gender inequality is the best long-term strategy. Therefore, ensuring women's ability to obtain credit to start a small business, to inherit and to own property, to go to school and develop their skills, to obtain employment on an equal basis, all of these things help to address the core conditions that make women and their children less vulnerable to human trafficking. In other words, equal rights for women and non-discrimination will allow them to control their lives, make their own choices, and starve the supply side of the business of human trafficking. What about the demand side of the human trafficking business? First and most basic is, of course, the general social devaluation of women and the objectification of women as sexual objects. But that also stems from gender discrimination. In the specific case I have mentioned of women being trafficked into China, the demand is driven by numbers. In this case, a disparity in the Chinese population where men outnumber women. That disparity is not a natural phenomenon, but is itself the result of gender discrimination. First, sex selection that leads to fewer births of girl babies than boy babies. Combined with the government's one-child policy, which also is a human rights violation, the preference for male children and the consequent termination of pregnancies that would result in girl babies has resulted in an unnatural gender disparity in the Chinese population. So Chinese men cannot find mates among Chinese women, especially those men in rural areas and who themselves might be poor and less attractive to Chinese women who are now in a position to be more selective in their choice of a husband. This disparity resulting from gender discrimination creates the demand for women from neighboring countries. So we can see in this concrete example how gender discrimination has created both the supply and demand aspects of the human trafficking market. The lesson to be learned is clear. Recognition of the equality of women and the eradication of gender discrimination is fundamental to eliminating the conditions that underlie the supply and demand of trafficking of women. Most of us at this conference are judges. Many of us are members of the International Association of Women Judges. Our association's mission is to promote judicial leadership, not for ourselves, but because we recognize a responsibility that comes with our positions of authority. We recognize, we create and seize the opportunity to bring justice to women and girls, including those who are the victims of trafficking. Susana Medina spoke about this commitment yesterday morning, and I am honored to succeed her in that commitment. As you have heard, many of the judges here are leaders in their national associations of women judges, and they are at the forefront in their countries and regions in understanding and combating human trafficking. You've heard about efforts in the Philippines, Argentina, Mexico, Peru, United States, Paraguay, Jamaica, Haiti, Trinidad, Tobago, New Zealand, Nigeria, Tanzania, Cote d'Ivoire. I probably have missed some. In addition, IAWJ has conducted training programs and developed anti-trafficking manuals in a number of countries. We have worked to develop a regional protocol and have provided expert advice on the development of anti-trafficking laws in several countries. We work in partnership with other international NGOs and receive funding from governments and international organizations such as the United Nations. Through IAWJ, we form a worldwide effort and judicial network to make a reality of the protections contained in laws and international standards, treaties, and declarations by a practical application of those norms, bringing a perspective of gender to these issues. If there is a deficiency in governmental cross-border investigation and enforcement, IAWJ can help to fill the gap. The judges of IAWJ are connected, and as judicial leaders, we can assist to train judges, to collaborate with other actors in the justice system and police, to judge with awareness of the need to protect and to assist victims of trafficking, to coordinate and seek necessary reforms to laws, procedures, and practices. As Chief Justice Geeta Mittal of India mentioned, IAWJ has the framework to become an international judicial resource of information about best practices and important judicial judgments. Our founder, Arlene Pact, has just suggested that the IAWJ website and our publications can serve to share these best practices and to become a repository of significant judicial decisions. Let me just mention that judicial integrity and independence are of particular importance because corruption is a major factor contributing to human trafficking around the world. Judicial review in corruption cases, procedural review of faulty investigations, and judicial oversight of witness and victim protection are critical to provide more effective remedies. We are nearing the close of this conference, and we have to decide how we go forward with all the good ideas and suggestions of our exchanges yesterday and today. They are about collaboration between judges and prosecutors to devise strategies and implement training at national, regional, and international level. I encourage those of you who are not already members of the IAWJ to join with us. We extend this invitation to judges and to prosecutors and to anyone in this room who wants to promote and safeguard the human rights of women and girls, to bring the force of the law against the business of human trafficking, and to bring hope and relief to its victims. Thank you.